it's now time for Climate Control, where we unpick the latest stories relating to the debate around climate change. And today I'll be looking back at some of the major events in 2023. It's been apparently the hottest year in recorded history, with some scientists saying that humans are unable to deal with the climate crisis of their own making. So we've seen flash floods in Libya, killing more than 11,300 in a coastal city of Derma. Wildfires ripped across Europe and Hawaii, with thousands of people evacuated across countries. And, of course, more close to home, Storm Gerrit, which has been causing havoc across the UK. That's threatening nearly an 80 mph winds in the next few days. But with some lighters and arson equipment found in locations of the Mediterranean and bad weather given over Britain's winter months, I'm taking a deep dive into these climate disasters and asking lots of questions. So joining me to unpick, I've got Jim Dale, meteorologist and commentator, also Paul Burgess, a climate scientist. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Jim Dale.
Yes.
OK, so I've been generous. I've talked about climate so-called catastrophes in 2023.
You've done my job for me, almost.
No, but they're open to discussion. So talk to me about some of the things that...
well, look, Nana, you could have gone on and on and named 100 different things that have happened and more across the globe. We often take our eyes away from the rest of the globe and only look at ourselves. But in this case, this has been a tumultuous year in terms of what's gone on, how it's gone on, the amount of people that have been affected by, not just in the UK. I think the UK is sometimes on the periphery of this, but the biggest one, I say the biggest one, sea surface temperatures, ice decreasing from Antarctic and Antarctic as well. But the disasters that you've already mentioned are the big ones. They're the ones that stand out. I've got a little piece from this morning's paper in The Guardian here. Climate disasters of 2023 reveal a failure to stem the crisis, experts say, which is precisely what you said on the intro. That's absolutely right. We've lost control.
Well, I balanced the intro, so you're talking as though I'm
just repeating what you basically said. But we've lost control, and to wrestle that back, I don't want to be completely negative, but make that absolutely clear. There are things that we can be positive about. For example, today, another day, 40% of our energy came from wind, the #1 top spot, and it has been for the last week or two all the way through. So I think that will increase. I think the renewables will increase. I think we've reached the top of fossil fuel emissions. I think they will start to decline in 2024. So that's the good news. The bad news is the catastrophes that we've seen this year will be repeated, not necessarily in the same places, but make this absolutely clear. They will happen worldwide. Globally.
No. This is a prediction. You're no soothsayer. I mean, come on. Look,
I'll be next year saying the same thing.
OK, well, and maybe it won't have happened even then. I mean, that's the question. But with regard to Libya, right now, that was caused by a dam bursting.
OK, so let me give you the facts.
That's what.
It was caused by 2 dams bursting, actually. But what was the causal effect? It was 8 inches of rain within a 24-hour period. Phenomenal amounts of rain. In other words...
So you're saying the dam bursting caused rain? What do you mean?
No. The rain aggregated 8 inches of rain in a very... In fact, it wasn't 24 hours. It was actually 8 hours. 8 inches of rain falling is equivalent to, give or take, 4 months of London rain. In other words, in a few hours, that landed, and that is what... Yeah, the dams might not have been in the greatest...
They weren't maintained, were they? Had they been there...
water in there...
In a non-maintained dam, badly maintained dam.
Well, you saw what happened. You saw... And you know, the headlines in some right-wing newspapers, The Sun, The Mail... run for your life, all of this type of thing from the wildfires and other,
I need to bring it over to Paul Burgess, because you said a few things. So your main things, just give me the first thing you talked about was this is the greatest year of climate change Greatest year of climate change ever. Jim says it's the greatest year of climate change.
It's total nonsense. I mean, this is the Jim who promised you and me that he produced the evidence for more droughts when the IPC say there aren't any. And the IPC say there aren't any more floods as well, etc., as do the environment agencies from both sides of the Atlantic, etc. So I go on data here, right? So if you take the dam, and, that's my speciality, as it were, that was a dam failure. What is a flood? It's too much water in a limited time. It's not water of a long time, and And you can't get worse than a dam bursting for a flood, because you get a lot of water suddenly. That's what a flood is. And there's no evidence that Jim can produce, and I challenge him again now, because he never produces evidence. I challenge him to produce the evidence for increasing floods in the world, because if he does, he's gone against the IPCC, the Environment Agencies, the lot. Next one, let's take tornadoes. As it happened, you know, there's more tornadoes in the UK per square mile than there are in America. I didn't know this.
Number two, actually. Number two.
No, well, actually, you're going to disagree with David Schultz, who happens to be the professor. Can I do it without interruption?
Because we let you talk to me.
Professor of synoptic meteorology, University of Manchester. He agrees with me. The tornadoes got nothing. Tornadoes happen. He had a PhD thesis on this, one of his students, and he works out that we get 2.3 in a unit area, 2.3 tornadoes a year, and America only gets 1.3.
Well, what about
tornadoes? And I've got data here. I actually handed one of them to show who's worse in the past and the patterns. So tornadoes are nothing to do with climate as such.
What about the wildfires in Europe?
Right, let's take the wildfires in Europe then. Right, the wildfires in Europe, again, if you look, well, in wildfires in Europe, I have a chart here. I've got one here, which I gave to the producer.
Can we get the wildfires in Europe chart out?
No, well, the wildfire in Europe is here.
Oh, we haven't got it.
No, we've got it here.
Right. What does it all mean? They can't see that. So just, if you put that down and just describe it, just tell us.
What? This is the European Environment Agency again. Yeah. I use data, yeah? And this doesn't show it. It shows a decline, if anything, of wildfires in Europe. Yeah. See, when you actually come to look at the data, when you're looking at climate, you've got to look at wildfires or floods, whatever it is, over a period of time. You haven't got any information. And I challenge you, because last time you said, and Nana repeated it, that you will produce the drought information, and you didn't.
It's not a case of coming on the thing with bits of paper, trying to flag them like you do, saying this is evidence, because most of the stuff you produce is bogus, to be frank with you. You've mentioned Europe. Europe had tremendous wildfires.
It's the Met Office.
Bear with me. Europe had tremendous wildfires, but you neglected to mention Canada, who had its worst wildfires ever.
No, I've actually got Canadian information.
Well, he said he's got the Canadian information.
New York.
Let's talk about the Canadian information, because he talked about Canada.
The smoke that went into New York, all of that sort of stuff.
You see,
So let him respond, because you've made a comment.
All the time. You don't even know what climate is. I'm sorry, I know you're a climate consultant, but you ought to know what it is. What it is, if you're going to look at wildfires in Canada, you've got to look over a period of time. And I didn't know it was going to be asked that. I looked at it recently, and it's got less. So you can't... I'm sorry. When I present you with data, you never, ever present me with data back. Ever.
Paul,
right, that's all I can do.
Bogus rubbish.
But that's. I'm going to have to stop you there. No. But he has pulled things off from the IPCC, and some of the things.
He's extrapolated little bits of the IPCC that don't count. You know what the IPCC is? It's a 90-page report that basically backs up what NASA, NOAA, and other organisations have been saying since the year.
Produce it, because it's bogus.
I don't need to produce it.
No, you can't.
Coming on here with a scrap of paper trying to show it to radio listeners.
This is the Royal Meteorological Society on the African floods. This is the Royal Meteorological Society saying that there's no way you can attribute it to climate change.
Again, you're cherry-picking like crazy.
I'm not cherry-picking.
I'm looking absurd what you say. What you've got to do, if I can just say, what you've got to do with all of this is join the dots. Join the dots of all of the...
You live in one dot. You live in weather.
I
live in lots of dots.
No, you're a water resource engineer. You're not even a climatologist. So what?
All right. Hold on.
Again.
No. As soon as you start doing that, I'm going to stop you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. No. Neither of you should do that. So let's. All right. What about Storm Gerrit then, or Gerrit? Jim, what is happening with this storm?
Yeah. Well, let's put it into context. Storms happen. They do happen, and it's not necessarily climate related. You can't say every single event is a climate event, because that would be wrong. That would be absolutely wrong. You've got to look after the event, maybe months and years. You've got to join these dots, but you can't say Gerrit's climate change. What you've got to look at is what's in it, how it occurs, whether there are a procession of them.
Can you see how it's occurred now without?
Yeah, it's the jet stream. It's there's one connection to climate, and that is the ocean sea temperatures of the summer, autumn time. Extremely warm. Give it extra energy. That's Easy science, isn't it? Very, very easy science, Paul, for you.
Let me say something here. The sea contains 1,000 times more heat than the atmosphere. The sea controls our climate.
Yes, it does. I would agree with you.
The oceans control our climate more. They've got 50 times more CO2 than the atmosphere. The ocean just murmuring causes problems. The El Nino, the La Nina.
Yep.
In the case of the African floods here, and I've got it from the Royal Meteorological Society, you know, that's not down to climate.
So what about Storm Garrett, though? We're talking
Storm
about...
Garrett is just a normal storm.
Yeah.
There's nothing different about it. But let me explain something. As the tropics, all the cooling and warming of the Earth takes place from either side, the poles. It doesn't take place in the tropics. The tropics more or less stay the same. So as you differentiate between the centre, the tropics, and the north, as there's a bigger differential, you get more extreme weather. So when it's cooler in the north... Now, I'm going to just say something, Jim.
Briefly.
22nd of December, just past, was the biggest ice extent in the Arctic since 2009. I've just published the video.
Living in dream world somewhere.
Well, I'm living in...
You really are.
You
really are.
Well,
you
instead of
really
telling us
are.
living in dream world,
Prove
what have
that
you got?
next week. I've made a statement. Prove it next week.
It just
I've
goes
done the
on
video.
and on and on. OK, let's just say,
the video's called
what's going to happen in 2024? El Nino is still running, climate change is still going. I've said about the positive things that are going to go on out there this year, hopefully. The negatives will continue. Watch the space, watch the disasters, OK? Because they will happen. That's my prediction.
He says, watch the space, watch the disasters, Jim Dale. Climate catastrophizing.